People in Paris are so stinky. Every time somebody walks past me, I get a whiff and I'm like, ugh. It's killing the vibe for me a little bit, but the croissants are good.
Yeah, so it balances out. Welcome to another reading vlog. In this vlog, I will be reading all of my books from Asian authors because as of filming this, it is the month of May. I don't know when I'm gonna post this video, probably way too late, but this is proof that I did participate in my own readathon. However, despite reading all Asian books, ironically, I am in the country of my own colonizers, and that is the French, the nasty, smelly, stinky French. It just happened to be that it was my friend's summer break. He's always wanted to go to Paris, so I just went ahead with him. You know, it hits different because I was in a month in Vietnam, and now that I'm here, I'm just looking at all these Parisians and I'm like, it's because of you, your ancestors, and I'm reading all of these Asian books too that are talking about generational trauma. We'll dive into those books. Before we get into that though, I want to thank today's sponsor. Future Cindy here to thank Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Their mission is to help readers discover new books and promote emerging authors for you to love. Every month they go through hundreds of book titles and curate 5 to 7 of the best books for you to choose from to be delivered right to your doorstep in this beautiful blue box. One of the books that I chose for the month is You Again. I looked up the synopsis of this. This is basically a romance book that is enemies to friends to lovers. So the moment that these two characters meet, they already hate each other, and the only thing that they have in common is that they happen to be sleeping with the same girl. That is so juicy, and I suspect that's probably why they started off on the wrong foot. Another book that I hadn't heard about until now is Bright Young Women. This is a novel that is inspired by a real-life sorority who was targeted by America's first celebrity serial killer. Since fall is coming up, I've started to want to read more thriller books again. The thing about Book of the Month is that they have really good prices. It's pretty much like the best price that you will get for hardcover new release fiction. You can even get your first book for $9.99 if you live in the US using my code readwithcindy. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up before the sun takes over my whole body. Now let's go back to the reading vlog. Hello, this is my first update from Paris. My friend Levi and I have just been typical tourists and exploring around. What do you think of Paris so far?
You know, I heard like a TikTok where people are like, don't buy deodorant in Paris, make sure you bring some from America. And I was like, it can't be that bad. It's that bad. People in Paris are so stinky. Every time somebody walks past me, I get a whiff and I'm like, ugh. It's killing the vibe for me a little bit, but the croissants are good.
Yeah, so it balances out. We went to Versailles and we bought the wrong tickets and we got fined $35. And since it was my mistake, I'm gonna go ahead and eat the cost. So I spent $70 for my own stupidity. Versailles was very beautiful, very crowded, but very beautiful. The more beautiful it was, the more I thought, wow, I'm so glad that the poor people decided to uprise and eat the rich, because seeing how big the palace was and how their gardens and property just expanded for miles and miles. They owned all of that, while regular French people were struggling to survive. America needs to take a page from the history books and also bring back the guillotine so we can also start chopping up all the rich people here. Speaking of wealth disparity, that brings me into the first book that I've read, which is A Living Remedy. This is a memoir that was on one of my top anticipated books for the year because I am a hoe for memoirs, especially when they are written by depressed Asian women, because that's solidarity. This memoir is focused more on wealth inequality and specifically how that affects medical inequality. Her father passed away when he was 67, but she knew that he could have lived on for much longer if he had access to proper health care. Then, less than a year later, her mom gets diagnosed with cancer and she loses her mom too. The whole process of having to grieve over losing her dad and then also dealing with her mom during cancer and also during the COVID-19 pandemic, because that's when it hit, it was just so much. But I feel like this book illustrated a huge reality for so many families where, and if you don't have the funds to take care of your loved ones as much as you hoped you could, and you were dealing with the pandemic, that is just like the shittiest time to deal with all of that. I'll read out loud a quote just so that you get a sense of the writing as well. All the while, I keep daydreaming about walking into traffic. From the moment the thought pushes its way into my grief-muddled brain, I know that I could never act on it. It's not that I want to hurt myself, it's that I cannot seem to work up any remorse when I think about no longer being alive. Nor does the thought frighten me, as it always did before. What if you didn't have to feel this way anymore? My mind proposes, and moments that are deceptively calm, moments when I am not sobbing in the shower or screaming in my car because I cannot scream at home. What if the pain could just end? There are some moments of hope too, where she tries to recollect herself and tie it into the grander theme of the book. How do you learn to cherish yourself, your life, when grief has made it unrecognizable? I am starting to feel that we do so not by trying to fill a void that can never be filled, but by living as best as we can in this strange, yawning terrain our loved ones have left behind, exploring its jagged boundaries and learning to see it as something new. I feel like whenever I travel to a different country, the constant ongoing joke that I make to my friends is that even if I get into any accident here, I know I will be fine going to the hospital because most likely the bill that I would have to pay is so much less than the bill that I would pay in America. It just makes me so cynical with the way that the American healthcare system is. And it's something that rich people don't even have to think about. Like, it's just something that they can get without having to stress about how that impacts the rest of their lives. With my family, we were very much of the mindset where if you aren't in pain for that long of a time, then you don't need to see a doctor. This book has just reinforced my cynicism with America and our healthcare system. And that's why I have run away to a colonizer country, because even though they are colonizers, at least they have some fraction of a work-life balance and proper healthcare and good pastries. I'm gonna go ahead and explore the rest of Paris. If I get hit by a car, it won't be a big deal because I'm not in America. Slay.
Dessus et même un vrai chat. Mais le plus intéressant c'est quand même la tasse et l'oreiller et l'assiette et le magnète et la serviette. Moi, tout s'échappe quand tu n'es pas là, tu me regardes. Je me sens seule comme sur une chaise à la boule du collège. Sur mon bureau, y a ta photo.
Hello, this is my second update in Paris. Levi and I visited a free art gallery that was, I think, around 6 floors high. I think my favorite part was the staircase because every floor is a different mural that they just painted all over the stairs and the walls. But when you get to each floor, you see like a different artist and you can actually see them like working in their studio as well. We also visited the catacombs, which Levi was a big fan of.
I had so much fun at the catacombs.
Yeah, it's basically you go down over 100 steps to underground, and then you go down this tunnel where the walls are just a bunch of skulls and bones.
I think fun is like maybe the wrong word to use, and because it's like actual human remains.
Right.
I found it was very
engaging.
Yeah, engaging. It's not like I was jumping for joy looking.
You were
at
like dead people, yay!
It was very interesting. It was like, I'm glad that I went.
So the next book that I read is How to Pronounce Knife. This is a collection of short stories that was written by a Laotian Canadian author. And the first story is actually about title itself, because it is about this young girl who brings a book home from school and she asks him for help on how to pronounce the word knife. It's a very simple exchange between them, but obviously it has implications because all of these stories are slice of life stories about Laotian immigrants who are trying to build a new life and make a home in a new country, and the struggles and loneliness that comes with immigrating to a new country where other people don't speak your language or you are seen in a different way because your English isn't perfect or you're seen as like a foreigner. So for context, they had a prior conversation to this where the father had insisted to her knife is pronounced as knife because there's a K in front. When she was trying to pronounce it that way in school, the teachers were trying to correct her. They didn't like how she was acting belligerent about it, and that's why she got in trouble in the office. And so she doesn't tell her dad what had happened. I highlighted the passage and it says, says, the child looks over at her father during dinner, how he picks up each grain of rice with his chopsticks, not dropping a single one, how he eats, clearing away everything in his bowl, how small and shrunken he seems. The child does not tell him the K in knife is silent. She doesn't tell him about being in the principal's office, about being told of rules and how things are just the way they are. It was just a letter, she was told, but a single letter out there alone and in the front was why she was in the office in the first place. She doesn't tell how she had insisted the letter K was not silent. It couldn't be, and she had argued and argued. It's in the front, the first one. It should have a sound. And then she screamed as if they had taken some important thing away. She never gave up on what her father said on that first sound there, and none of them, with all their lifetimes of reading and good education, could explain it. I really like the emphasis of how these characters have spent their whole lives reading and having a good education, but when you are a foreigner in a country like America or Canada, you're seen as more stupid, and it doesn't matter how intelligent you are in your country or in your first native language. And honestly, English is a nonsensical language. Like, that shit does not make any sense. Oh, I also want to note that the second short story is titled Paris. Really, I'm just following the themes in all the books I'm reading here. Overall, a lot of these stories, as you can probably tell from the immigrant experience, are very bleak. In these slice of life moments, these stories illustrate what people have to do or what people have to grasp onto just to kind of like make it through the day. I also find that maybe reading short stories is the way to go when you're traveling, because a lot of times I like to read whenever I'm commuting or just in between times where I have a little bit of downtime. That might not be an ideal way of picking up an entire novel. Whereas with short stories, they're just so short, you can read them in chunks and then you're good to go whenever you're going about your day. I'll update you next time on the next book that I read. Hello, I am back with another update. Levi and I visited the Dior Museum. I think that is one of my favorite things that we've done in Paris so far. It was just so beautiful. And we got in with our student IDs, which was only €8. So we love a museum that recognizes that students are poor. We also love a museum that doesn't check whether we're actually students or not. What did you think of the Dior Museum?
It made me emotional because Dior is my favorite fashion house. Just seeing all of like the work that went into those designs, and the designs of, her name was Maria Grazia Chiuri. I loved like almost everything she did.
Speaking of pretty things, the next book that I read is If I Had Your Face. This is a novel that is set in South Korea, and it is also kind of like a slice of life novel because there's not really much of a plot. It's really just focused on these 4 women who are trying to make it through this world, and especially with South Korean culture, there are such rigid standards of beauty. And there's another character who is a sex worker, and she ended up being my favorite character out of the 4 because I think I just gravitate towards characters who are beautiful and shallow and are bitchy about it. The whole theme of this book is that being a woman is exhausting. I think that's why I liked the sex worker character, because there are so many moments where she has these cynical reflections about life and the way that the world works. And because I am also a cynical bitch, I'm like, yeah, she is making some points. For example, one of the side characters who's trying to get plastic surgery really also wants to be a sex worker so that she can make more money. The character that I like is thinking about how this isn't like a good idea. Like, the scenario that she's in is not an ideal situation for other people to aspire to. And the quote reads, "She does not know what this work does to you, how you cannot hold on to your old perspective. You will not be able to save your money because there will never be enough of it. You will keep doing things you never expected to do. You will be affected in ways you could never imagine." I think I tend to like books or just stories in general that have a cast of primarily women, because then you get the benefit of seeing all the depictions of what being a a woman is like. It made me reflect a lot on South Korean culture because, God, I would hate to have to deal with those standards. Like, I would be grotesque if I ever lived there and showed my face to the public eye. I just find it very sad that there's so much pressure to be a certain way or look a certain way in order to move forward in your life. All right, I will update you next time for the next book. Hello, updating you in the evening this time. I wanted to update and say that I am currently halfway through a new book called Idol Burning. So this book is all about stan culture because it focuses on this high school girl who is obsessed with this guy who's like a member of a popular singing group, and she has this blog that's dedicated to him, and she spends hours just scrolling through information about him and his life, and she'll analyze its interviews and write down all of his answers and any kind of information that she finds out about him. Like if he says what his favorite ice cream flavor is, she's gonna write that down in her little notebook. It feels very parasocial, but the main character is fine with this being in a one-sided relationship. She likes kind of being anonymous here, and she doesn't care about like being recognized or having any of this be reciprocated. So a lot of her devotion is kind of described in almost like a religious way. Like this girl could easily be swept up in a cult if he became like a cult leader. So even though she's never met him, she describes him as her savior and that she can't imagine surviving in a world without him. And there's also things going on in her personal life that you can tell she has some mental illness. Like her family is harping on her about why she hasn't like applied for jobs. She is just really struggling with finding acceptance or understanding from her family. I also feel like that's the thing where I've noticed people when they are struggling with something going on in their personal life, that also makes it really easy for them to latch onto like a celebrity, because I think in a way it's like this form of escapism, or just be really invested in their personal business, because I think it's easier to do that than to reflect on yourself. That's just my observation. So the inciting incident for this book is that there is a rumor the guy that she is idolizing has assaulted a female fan. I'm very curious to see how this main character is going to react to it. I don't know if she excuses it. It sadly wouldn't be uncommon for how a lot of people operate in real life when their problematic fave is acting out too. All I know is that her life is really shitty. This girl is mentally ill. Her biggest obsession and pretty much like the only thing she wakes up in her life to look forward to is this celebrity. But now he's like in this scandal. We'll see how it goes. Probably the next time I update, I'll be done with the book. I hope some drama goes down. Like I think it'd be kind of wild if she meets the idol in person and he turns out to be totally different. So we'll see. I'll update you on the tea next time.
I'm searching for new place.
home from Paris. I am now staying in an Airbnb in San Francisco for the next month and a half. I finished the book Idol Burning on my plane ride back home. This is definitely gonna be 3 stars for me. I think I was just expecting a lot darker shit to happen or something juicy. I mean, it did get kind of dark, but the juice was lacking. I realized that this is technically considered a novella, and maybe that's why I feel like we've only scratched the surface when it comes to discussions of parasocial relationships and worshiping of idols and celebrities like they're a cult, because there's so much that can be said about that. Clearly, the main character has some mental illness going on. She was struggling in all aspects of her life. We saw her spiral, but not in a way that felt like a complete story to me. I was curious if there was going to be anything more about the idol that she's worshiping. Like, who did he really punch? There were rumors about him possibly punching a fan, or maybe it was his girlfriend, and I was like really set on that. But then I don't think the identity of the girl was really confirmed, and I guess it's not really about the specific incident, but more so the main character's reaction to that. Even then, I don't know, her response was kind of lukewarm. She tries to psychologically analyze him and what he must be going through as he is dealing with his career going into flames, but she doesn't really take a hard stance on anything. And maybe that's accurate to a lot of people and their problematic faves. It's the way that I don't even have to list any names, but you can probably instantly think of so many names for celebrities that are problematic, but people will go ahead and worship them anyway. Ultimately, I feel like this would have been a really interesting character study. There is something to be said about how so many people, especially young women who are dealing with a lot of stuff going on in their personal lives, they seek out a celebrity or it's just someone they don't know and project so much of their emotional baggage or idealizations onto that person. That is a reflection of not only celebrity culture or idol culture, but also when you look inwardly, what is going on in here? You have to have some kind of vulnerability that would make you think the way that you think and worship someone like that. And especially when we factor capitalism into that, how do celebrities and their management and PR take advantage of that kind of vulnerability for their own monetary gain? That pretty much wraps up the books that I have read. For my next reading vlog, I will be staying in California the whole time. I'm not gonna be jumping around different countries. Go ahead and subscribe for my channel, and goodbye.